start talking about the geographical places named from the book of Genesis all the way through Malachi, you're talking about the continent of Africa. All right? But we don't, because of the Renaissance, because of the artwork and the iconographic work from the Renaissance forward and movable print, the world thinks that Jesus looked like Michelangelo's artists and Michelangelo's models. I was in Africa, one of the tours I led to in the holy city where Jesus was born, and in the church of the Nativity, there on the wall, the great big picture of 12, 13 men from my complexion to your complexion, laying down on this side on one arm with some bottles, glasses, cups, and not glasses, but cups of goblets and food particles in the midst of them as they recline like this. And one of my members, PhD, educator, said, "Pastor, what is that?" I said, "That's the Last Supper." She said, "No, I've seen the Last Supper." And she's seen Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper that has people sitting at a table like Italians eat. That's not how they ate in the first century Palestine. They came in, they took off their shoes, and they reclined. And one reason they take off their shoes is because my feet are in your face. All right, you wash your feet. Now, remember it says the one who leaned upon Jesus' breast? John was right here. So when he said, "One of you shall betray me," John leaned back and said, "Who is it?" Give him up, you know. But what was shocking was the color to her, the color of those people. But when you look at the colors of the artwork from the Ethiopian church, from the 1st and 2nd century, Justinian coins, you don't see European or Italian models. Well, that kind of truth, for me, became, African Americans need to understand how the Bible came to be, what the Bible is talking about, who these people look like. I've never seen a white person with skin looking like bronze and woolly hair. That's the only physical description you have of Jesus. Right. Well, that kind of truth is just not told. So what happens? What happens is we push Eurocentrism and we push European culture as synonymous with Christianity, and you got a whole bunch of black kids wanting to be white.
Wow.
Because they want to be more like Jesus, and that's not Jesus. That's not your Jesus. He didn't look like that. All right, so that was one piece for me. Another piece for me was helping Africans to deconstruct the miseducation process, Africans living in diaspora, that has been foisted upon us by the Eurocentric educational system. That Chinese come to America and they're still Chinese. In fact, y'all got in Baltimore some Chinese restaurants, don't you? Mm-hmm. Japanese come to America, they're still Japanese. Philippines come to America, they're still Philippines. In Chicago, we pour dye into the river every year to make it look green, because of St. Patrick's Day. They still Irish. Only Africans come to America, and they ain't African no more. They colored, Negro with a capital N, coon, jungle bunny, they're everything but Africa. And Africans don't understand their connectivity, which is what a part of that Virginia Union background, Nigerians and Ghanaians. You got Ga, Igbo, Ibibu, Yoruba, Fanti, Chui speaking, Akan people. They get over here and they're all colored. Or they Negro. Where's the continent named Negro? And African Americans don't know who they are because they have no connectivity. How come we can't get, because it was, as Asa Hilliard said, it was not by benign neglect that you're left out of the story, it's by malignant intent. Civilization did not begin in Europe, it began in Africa. The Bible doesn't begin in Europe, it begins in Africa. And helping African Americans to know that and to understand who they are helps them to get a much healthier self-esteem in terms of understanding, where am I? And I'll never forget, man, I was in Ghana about 10 years ago, and the Ghanaians, because what happened with missionaries carried their culture to Africa, to China, and everywhere else, as synonymous with Christianity. So here I am showing in the book of Exodus, Shifra and Puah, the two midwives. What did Pharaoh say to them? He said, when you see the Hebrew wives upon the what? You know what it says? It's the Bible quiz. Upon the something. When you see the Hebrew women upon the birthing stool. It's right there in your Bible. birthing stool. You've been reading that all your life. That's an African way of having babies. What knows OBGYN lab with stirrups? It was a stool. They sat on the stool. As a matter of fact, in the black community, they still say, when you gonna drop that baby? Because the midwives got underneath the stool. And when the Ghanaian women saw that, it was like, nobody ever showed us that. Wow. Nobody ever showed us that. Wow. All right? That African culture, right there in the Word of God, all throughout the Word of God, to help African Americans embrace their own faith. Now, and remember context. Louis Farrakhan's a close friend of mine, yes. But the city of Chicago is the home of the Nation of Islam. All right? And a lot of, you say this is the first generation of church for many people, empowerment. You got folk in Chicago, ain't been to church. So what are they hearing? That's the white man's religion. They say, oh, yeah, it sure is. No, you don't know your own religious history. You don't know your own religious history. It's also the home of the Black Hebrew Israelite nation. So that in Chicago, we were losing folk from the church who never been to church, who didn't know anything about the church and didn't know anything about the Word of God. So to connect those dots and help them to connect their own story and their own history and to see how they are just Africans born in another country. Malcolm X said it in 1964. Malcolm X said what? If a cat crawls into the oven and has kittens, do you call them biscuits? An African in the oven of hatred in America is still an African in diaspora. Most Africans in diaspora, we're not taught about Africa. We're not taught about Africans in diaspora. We don't know that there are 30 million Africans in North America. In fact, we think America means United States of America. This America, boy. No, there are 3 Americas. And in the second America, Central America, there's another 30 million Africans. And in South America, there are over 100 million. There are 100 million Africans in Brazil alone. But we're not taught that. We're not taught the transatlantic slave trade. We're not taught anything at all about our history. We are taught 1776. 1812, the War of 1812. What was going on in Sudan in 1812? What was going on in Ghana in 1812? Why? Because you're not taught that. On purpose, you're not taught that. We are taught in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. What kind of car you got? I heard you mention it on television, but I forgot. What kind of car you got? Range Rover. Can I go outside and discover your Range Rover? How can I discover something that belonged to you? Columbus didn't discover America. Matter of fact, he never even got to North America. He never got off the boat in the Caribbean. But that's the lie we teach our children. We teach our children Columbus. There wasn't nothing going on over here until the Europeans got here. Who are the Arawak? Who are the Sioux, the Comanche, the Apache, the Arapaho? We don't know nothing. We stole their country just like Israel stole the Palestinians' country.
One of the things that much of America was not introduced to you about in your soundbite in the whole controversy is your background in musicology and understanding the influence of music on a culture. And you referenced in your open statement some of the current songs that are missed in the black church. Where do you see black music going both in the church and out of the church?
I see. Let me just say this too. I see signs of hope. I really do. I do see signs of hope, and I see what you're doing, and I see your generation. Some things that most people, again, because the media doesn't pick them up,